Well, a very good morning to you from wherever you're tuning in from, and welcome to your Sunday premiere political show, where we review the week's top governance developments and look into the crystal ball in a bid to anticipate how those developments will play out going forward. I'm Jesse Rogers. Thank you for making time, and what a time it is to be alive. Truly, sovereign power belongs to the people, because just this week, President William Ruto succumbed to the pressure from the youth, majority of who are Gen Z, choosing to dissolve the entire cabinet, except from the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi. Equally, we've seen calls for a broad-based political engagement under the guise of a national dialogue. Is dialogue simply the way to treat the symptoms, or are we treating the disease itself? Also, the race to reconstitute IEBC is on. These are the topics we're set to evaluate during the show, so do join us till the tail end of the broadcast. And equally, feel free to plug into the conversation. We welcome your views. You can find us on X at KTNNewsKE, at the Jesse Rogers. Kindly feel free to use the hashtag InsidePolitics. Before I get to introduce my panelists joining me in studio, allow us to take a look at some of the sentiments that were shared by the president on Thursday this week as he was dismissing his cabinet, except from Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, which is obvious, and the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Foreign Affairs CS Musalia Mudavadi. Let's listen in.
In line with the powers given to me by Article 1521 and 1525B of the Constitution and Sections 12 of the Office of the Attorney General's Act, decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the Cabinet Secretaries and Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya.
ODM has never shied away from stepping up and having difficult conversations whenever the destiny of our nation is at stake. Indeed, it is said that it is in times of crisis that leadership emerges. The emerging issues and the urgent need to address them is not about rescuing the Kenya Kwanza regime or indeed William Ruto. The nation is bigger than and distinct from any one of us.
So we cannot say that his juniors should bear the burden. The ball stops with him.
Okay, just a couple of sentiments that were shared following President William Ruto's decision to overhaul the cabinet, and that coming in an unprecedented move. Not the first time in Kenya's history, because we'll definitely look back in 2005, where former president, the late Mwai Kibaki, did a similar move after the referendum didn't go the government's way. So that's the latest in terms of all to do with the cabinet being dissolved. And just to give you a hint of what to expect on today's edition of the Sunday Standard, the big headline is all to do with shock, fury, and horrific killings in the backdrop of those bodies that were retrieved from a dump site in Mukuru kwa Jenga slums in Nairobi County. Of course, we'll have more details in regards to that. I understand the acting Inspector General of Police is set to talk today in regards to the bodies that were retrieved from that dump site in Mukuru kwa Jenga. Away from that, one of the political stories you can look forward to is encompassed on pages 4, 5, 18, and 19 of the Sunday Standard, how Ruto's overtures spell the end of Azimio coalition, where they ask the question, is it courage or betrayal? There you have it. So in case you're heading out and you get to start your day, feel free to grab a copy of the Sunday Standard, where you'll be adequately informed about the latest developments happening in the country. Allow me to introduce my panelists joining me in studio. First of all, I'll start with Dr. Duncan Ojwang, who is an international law expert. Asante sana for your time, and karibu to our studios. It's been a while, Dr.
It has been more than a year, is it?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, and let me say hello to the viewers. I'm excited to be here.
It's been a crazy week, if I can use that word. A lot has happened. Some read it, some saw it coming. Did you see it coming?
No, the question is, how did we get here? you're right.
And we'll get to answer that during our discussions. Asante sana, Dr. Ojwang. We're equally joined by Ambassador Dr. Koki Muli, who is a governance and elections expert with her PhD in elections. Karibu sana to the show. It's your first time here, so it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's not my
first time.
first time,
okay.
But it's a first time with you.
Me.
Yes.
Good correction. And in case she looks like a familiar face, she's usually a contributor to the Sunday Standard as well, where she writes inciting opinions right there. So that's why we decided to have her on this particular edition of the show. So Daktaris, asante sana for your time. We're equally joined virtually, and we'll be engaging him a little bit later on with Joshua Kipto, who is a former Nandi speaker and an advocate as well. So riveting discussion set to happen right here on Inside Politics. Feel free to chime into the discussion using the hashtag Inside Politics at KTNewsKE on the X platform. So let's begin with the move that sent the country talking. Dr. Ojwang, I'd like to begin with you because you pointed out the obvious question. How did we find ourselves here? There's some who seem to be hinting at the opulence that was displayed by some of these cabinet secretaries, hinting that this was the final nail in their coffin. But what do you think led us to this particular point where we are at, where the president had to dissolve cabinet?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's like almost an onion with many layers. There is the obvious disappointment that the president expressed. Back to our constitution of what kind of cabinet did the constitution envision? You know, the big debate of technocrats or politicians, to the big issue that, remember, we used to have our cabinet secretary who were members of parliament, but the constitution thought we were going the technical way. And whether we are fully moved to technical way. Remember, the attempt of BBI was again to bring cabinet who are going to be members of parliament. So it looks like we are still within that limbo. But yes, so there is many factors, but I think the president did not waste the crisis, is it? The bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. And so he saw that as a time or an opportunity to reinvent himself by easing and letting the almost the entire cabinet go. How did we get here? A series of things, difficult time, hard time, a lot of things being pushed by the government to be implemented at the same time. There is the issue that the president has come out clear to say that I want to work and I don't want to concentrate on my re-election. And maybe, therefore, I'm going to do the best and not be looking so much at the political bellwether of how is that popular, maybe moving so much from what could be popular to maybe what in his view and the cabinet they think is urgent and necessary. How do you balance? So many factors, Rogers.
Interesting. So, Dr. Koki, how did we get here from your point of view? And equally, this move by the president, is it his political silver bullet, or how do you view it, as a smokescreen? Because there are those who are questioning that, yes, he's fired, but we need more action. So talk to us about your views. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Rogers, for having me here. And I agree actually with Daktari when he says that it's an opportunity for the president to fire his cabinet. But it is not a surprise because we were expecting it in the sense that either as a reshuffle or something like that. You recall, Rogers, that we had the president himself and the deputy president express concern about the inaction or the lateness, you know, the conduct of their own cabinet secretaries.
Yes.
Remember during the performance contracting meeting that they had, he expressed his frustration and his concern that his cabinet ministers are not only coming late to meetings, that he can't even reach them on phone, and that they actually don't know as much as they should in their dockets, that he knows more than them. And therefore, you could feel the frustration, and we expected a reshuffle. But thanks to Gen Zs, we have, he seized the opportunity to sort of rid himself of a group. I mean, not all the cabinet secretaries were incompetent, according to the deputy president and the others. There are some really good ones there, one or two that I know personally, and I know that given an opportunity, they would have done a little better. But the majority of them, besides the opulence, I mean, have you seen the kind of utterances they have been making? So, of course, that was expected, and thanks to Gen Zs, now we have the entire cabinet out. What surprised many of us was how he left one of the cabinet secretaries, because, I mean, the law says otherwise. And also, I mean, the format of doing it. So for me, I'm not thinking that the jury is still out there as to the genuineness of this action. And this will be actually determined or become clearer as we see with whom he replaces the cabinet secretaries. But having said that, lastly, I would say that it is his prerogative as an elected president of the Republic of Kenya to choose his cabinet whichever way. And that's why parliamentarians told him, whatever it is that you're giving us, well, it's yours.
Exactly.
So deal with it.
We can remember the words from John Mbadi back then.
Exactly.
Anyway, I understand Joshua Kipto is now joining us virtually. Kipto, a very good morning to you. And as you give us your take on the move by President William Ruto to purge his cabinet, the big question would be, what next? How exactly will the next batch of CSs be appointed? Will the president go back to political allegiance, as was the case as he was putting the said cabinet secretaries in power, or should he focus on matters to do with the capacity, appointments based on capacity? What's your take on what next?
Thank you very much, Lucy, and I want to appreciate also the other distinguished panelists. One, I think I want to specify that this particular political occurrence is unprecedented. None of us can authoritatively claim that it was something that could be seen or could be foreseen to happen. The manner of the protest, the manner of the upheavals is unique and different. One thing I need to point out is that to have a case, more or less, it's a moment, and I think in the last 1 or 2 weeks, you've seen conversation around that the nation has experienced such moments before, such political or constitutional moments. And I think the closest that this has been compared with is maybe way back in 1990, 91, when there was a clamor for multipartyism. In 2002, when during the sunset years of the Moi regime and ushering in of the combined opposition win, and I think this should be one among those moments that I don't think anyone could foresee. Yes, there was more or less distress among the citizenry or the population about the tough economic times. But importantly, I think the current regime, the Kenya Kwanza regime, sold an idea that the people bought, especially this generation, the younger generation. When you sell hope, then it means once a society adopts on hope, then they expect to reap rewards out of it. And I feel more or less it is a success, if you ask me, when a country for a long time we've been yearning for politics of issues and interest, and that firmly has become the new norm. So as you have rightfully asked, we say, what next? One common thing. This is the first time you find a president forced into a corner to reconsider his administration out of popular public protest, because the comparison that was done with the Kibaki for 205, it was after an event, which was the constitutional referendum that saw the government lose their vote. But for this one, it is out of public discontent, public anger, and importantly, the governance moment that has just visited upon this regime, in the sense that the president is therefore forced to listen to the concern of the people and the citizens. So what follows next is that, one, as Dr. Ojwang has said, that every crisis presents opportunities, strictly from political sense. And for the president, this is a good opportunity. Political patronage, loyalty has always been a consideration. A government that wins with its key components and players. And when a president or a governor or whoever is choosing his team, it is always meant to also more or less to appreciate and to reward such a team. But with this crisis, then it means the president has been unshackled from such patronage, such interests, or such loyalties. That means that the president is therefore free to respond to the needs and the dire voices from across the Republic, seeking a change in our governance model, seeking a change in our day-to-day operations as a government. That would mean, therefore, that I would feel that the president will be constrained not to again go back to appoint people primarily on the basis of loyalty and allegiance to his party and all that. He has already indicated, if you saw his statements yesterday when he was in Elgeyo Marakwet, he mentioned that now it's time to begin afresh. It's time to come in with a new government that shows or has the face of Kenya. That is euphemism for a government of national unity. That is euphemism for a government that is not constrained or just within the ranks of Kenya Kwanza, but across the political divide. Number two, I think it is also a chance for him to try broaden the edge, as well as more or less even the spread across the Republic, ethnic and regional balancing, age, religion, and all those will be a consideration. So this one will be an unprecedented cabinet compared to the past. There's one element that was captured very well in discussions on the media, where it was said we are now entering a new age where it is government. It is a form of a co-presidency or a governance through public popular support, where the president will be very much aligned to what the public wants. That also means, remember now, being a new cabinet that must first vetting, the MPs will be so keen and so critical in this process to also try redeem themselves. So that means vetting will be unprecedented. It's not the usual vetting where the names are just thrown to Parliament for consideration. It means that the public will actively participate in the vetting of the individuals, and that would mean Parliament will be on crossroads. Parliament will have to step up and match the energies of the public in vetting and coming up with the right name. So the pressure is on the president, the pressure is on the parliamentarians, that whoever or whichever names are brought, how much scrutiny will be given and how much vetting will be done. So I see a case where the president will exercise a free hand compared to previously. He will not be going out to reward his allies. That has been done. And I think this crisis has offered him a chance to prove that, for example, to his allies and friends, that I did the best I could, but these are unprecedented times. So going forward, the nation now comes ahead, and a nation is always more important than consideration like friendship and loyalty. So for me, what next? I'm looking forward to a cabinet that is different from what we had. Number two, a cabinet that will be more responsive to the public needs and concern. And this is a case of trying to placate the public anger that has been building over, and a regime survival is at stake here. So I think the expectation would be a very competent and more or less a likable cabinet by the public. That becomes a critical component of the consideration by the president.
Interesting. And in one way or the other, Dr. Kipto is painting an ideal picture. Because what exactly happens when allies are put outside in terms of they're not involved in these political appointments? They turn into foes. So how does Ruto move forward with averting a political crisis because of these allies who might turn into political enemies once sidelined?
Kipto has aptly put it. According to the Constitution, now everyone remembers the biggest word is sovereignty belongs to the people. The president is enjoying delegated power from the people. And that delegated power means that the real allies and the real stakeholders are the population. You don't know them, but they know you because they are your citizen, they are the power holders, and therefore, with the new requirement of public participation, not just that they move to your agenda, but they also bring agenda to the table. That has never been what happens. People thought public participation is you come, the leaders bring an agenda, you react to them, but the new dawn of, no, I also come with agenda and counter agenda, and we bargain. So I think, yes, there is a little bit of that, chemistry, we always talk of that, we talk a lot about that, they're friends, but I think that we are moving to a higher value where we are not transacting at the level of, I know ambassador, and therefore I'm comfortable with her, but a level of what does she offer, who is she, what does she have, and if we can do that to everyone, then we can have a country where we are talking now of merits, where we are talking of equal shot, where we are talking of good governance values that are clearly in Article 6 of the Constitution and 10, so that the issue of we brought this vote, therefore we expect this, is minimized, because that's not a good principle of governance. The issue of we have this much shares is minimized, so that everybody can access the table. Not everyone will access the table, but everyone has an equal shot at the table, whether you are hanging out in parliament or wherever you are. So I think that this constitution was meant to promote, and Dr. Ari knows that, political hygiene. I think we are moving to better political hygiene, where we are talking of merits, where we are talking of all these other considerations beside the personal and the friend zone, and that's a good thing.
Interesting. Dr. Ari, as you come in, because we've had, Kipto hinted at something to do with the government of national unity, because ever so often when the political class is under fire, they come together and try and push for their agenda as well. So how do we ensure that the Gen Z's issues are not taken over by the issues the political class might term as, this is the priority and not yours?
Thank you. Let me start by saying that I would look at it in three ways.
Yes.
One, the constitutional framework. Two, the trigger, that is the Gen Z. And three, the issue of government of national unity. Let me start with the game changers. The game changers that triggered the disbandment or the sending home of all these the CSs is actually the political transformation that we are experiencing from the leaders of this political transformation, who we are generally calling Generation Z, and who actually have now shown us a way. As I said in my article today, we have been suffering from a political paralysis since a while ago, and now we are sort of woken up by the Generation Z, and they are not alone. They actually voiced what the majority of Kenyans have been wanting to do, but sort of got lost somewhere on the way. So I would say, for example, that the biggest problem and the leaders of this political transformation that is actually changing the entire political landscape are saying, you are not listening. You are not listening to us. And as one person who has really been in this sphere for a very long time, I tried to step back and ask myself, what are they saying simply? And simply our leaders of this political transformation are telling us, just implement the Constitution. Number one, follow the law, the rule of the law.
Yes.
Secondly, and when you do that, everything, the respect for human rights, democracy, good governance, management, end to corruption, everything is in that beautiful constitution of ours. The problem we have had is that it's not being implemented. And that brings me to my second point, that's the constitutional framework. When we were in Bomas, we were very particular to include Article 152.3 that said that all cabinet secretaries, and we changed their names from ministers because of all, minister had become like a gravy train that you use, that flag to deny or give development and so on. Yeah. Anyway, we put that clause in the Constitution to say ministers should henceforth be technical people who are competent in the various dockets that they are going to hold. Like, for example, they need to know what they are going to, even though they are policy leaders, the strategic leaders in their dockets, they should have the competencies that are required to understand how that ministry, the details of how that ministry runs. Yes. It's not that they micromanage it, but they provide proper and appropriate strategic leadership. That's number one. Number two, the reason why we wanted them to be technical people is not just because of competencies, which the Gen Zs also want. And they are saying, irrespective of your tribe, nepotism, and all those other reasons why people get appointed, forget those. Focus on whether this person is competent enough and has the credentials to manage and run this process. And they also can administer a docket. The second thing is we didn't want politicians. It was very direct expression of the framers of the Constitution that we don't want politicians to run ministerial dockets for many, many reasons. Okay. And that's why we are saying, make it a professional executive that the cabinet should be able to be removed and occasionally answer to Parliament and prepare reports to Parliament on how they are managing this process. Okay. And that is to avoid those other reasons. And the other thing, and that's the last one on the constitutionality of this, before I say something on the government of national unity, briefly, is to say that we didn't want to have the what do you call it, stick and carrot and stick, whereby a president wins an election and then goes to Parliament and raids, MPs from the opposition and other places, and makes them ministers, so that then they can get, he can get majority in Parliament. Okay. Little did we know that, in fact, whether he has technical people as ministers, they still would poach members of Parliament. But that's another story. Okay. And I would say that the reason why that is important is because if you have a mandate that you are given by people, then there are two ways in which to explore that. Either at the very start, and I'm going to the third question, at the very start, you have a government of national unity whereby you have a coalition government, okay, and you can get from others. At the start, once the election results are put and they are sworn in and so on, that's at the stage where, because ours is pre or post election coalition, so you decide, now I don't have the majority of people that I need, but let me now try to see how I can approach these other political parties through their political party framework, because we are political party democracy. And therefore, you cannot actually wish them away. And political parties have a critical role to play in this process. And not just the leaders of the political parties or the patrons of political parties, but the framework of the political parties. So that then you can take all these people, sit down with them, negotiate with them, and tell them, now the elections are over, we have to have a bipartisan approach to governance. And therefore, we are going to form a government of national unity together at that stage. Right now, in my view, I think it is not genuine, this talk about forming a government of national unity at this stage. I think it is just a political survival move. And I think that it actually, in my view, I would really think that it doesn't help. And we have seen in the past experiences that the so-called government of national unity, bringing other political leaders into the cabinet or wherever, has not helped Kenya become a better democracy, has not helped good governance, has not ended corruption, has not done the things that the Gen Z want. Gen Z don't want dialogue, they don't want government of national unity. They want whoever is leading this country with the executive, parliament, and judiciary to just obey the constitution and just do the right thing. That's all.
Interesting. Well, we have to take a short break. The bills need to be paid. But as I come back, I'll put Kipto and Dr. Ojwang right here to task on the same question. Is this simply a matter of political expediency where they're taking care of their issues while trying to form a government of national unity? Allow us to take that short break. You're watching Inside Politics. We'll be back with much more, so do keep it right here.